Welcome back to the channel. Drew here, and the Fed has increased rates over 3% on the year, which is causing a lot of veteran hosts who are used to buying newer, nicer cars to reconsider going back to used cash cars. I'm going to give you 6 points on the only type of used cash cars that I consider renting on the Turo platform, and then I'll give you 3 of my own personal examples that I've used the last 2 years and became very profitable. Hang tight, let's jump in, let's talk about it. All right, guys, so look, if you follow my channel, 2021, I was buying a lot of new cars, C8s and Broncos and Defenders, Land Rovers. I bought a lot of new cars. I looked at the values of used cars, which were way up, and the values of new cars, which were up slightly. I was targeting high, vehicles that were super hot, and then I was able to lock in rates anywhere from $199 to $399 when inflation was just through the roof. So it was almost a no-brainer for 2021. 22 is a different story, and the Fed has raised the rates 0.75 basis points, 75 basis points, 3 times in a row. And then there was 2 increases before that. So 5 increases on minimum on the year. Rates are up over 3% since January of this year. And so that causes veteran hosts like myself to have to reconsider purchasing more expensive vehicles because the value dynamic shifts quickly when you're financing high-end vehicles, and your rates are no longer 2 and 3%, and now they're 6 and 7%. And I'm going to tell you just straight up, if you're new to the Turo platform, you should not be taking on loans that are 7, 8, 9%. Only if you're using Turo to actually build your credit. There's a way to do that. I have a video coming up that we're going to talk about. But for most people, you should not be borrowing loans at 7, 8, 9% to put them on Turo. It really eats into the profitability of your rental income, and it's just a very dangerous thing to do, especially the more expensive vehicles. So let's talk about used vehicles, cash vehicles. What vehicles should you be targeting? I'll give you 6 points on the only types of used vehicles I'll consider for my fleet. The first point is vehicles you know some of the history on, okay? Now, I'm a big believer in this. Now, unless you are a professional mechanic and you can look at a car and test the oil and sniff the radiator fluid, and you can tell all you need to know about the car, unless you have that kind of experience or you have someone like that that can go with you, the history of the car that you're purchasing is very, very important. In fact, I'll say this, that the best Turo vehicles, cash, used Turo vehicles that you'll buy for your fleet will be vehicles from family, friends who've owned the car for 3, 4, 5, 6 years, and they're replacing the vehicle. I've bought over a dozen of these type of vehicles, and anytime someone says, hey, they're looking at a new car, they're considering a new vehicle, and I know what they're driving, I always ask them, hey, would you give me an opportunity to buy your vehicle? Maybe I could probably give you a little more than the dealership could. And many times it works out good for them. You give them a fair price, but it's an under market price compared to what you would be able to buy it on the market. And these are great Turo vehicles because you know the history on the car. I don't like buying cars from these auctions and different things like that where you just don't have a lot of history. Even if you're buying a car from someone you know, I would always, get a Carfax on the vehicle. Make sure you do a history report. Obviously, you got to dodge salvage titles and even vehicles that are not a salvage title, but they were a total loss. That can be an issue with renting it on the Turo platform. And there's lots of things like that. You got to know the history of the car. And what I look for when I'm buying a car is I want a car that's had the minimal amount of owners possible. If I can find a one-owner car, that's great. If I'm purchasing a car, I never want to buy cars of people that have only had the car for a few months. Usually these are people who are flippers. They don't know anything about the history of the car. or they've got the car and it's already causing them problems and they're trying to get rid of it. So I like cars that people have, even if they're not the first owner, they've at least had the car for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. The longer the better, and it tells me a little bit about the car and as far as that stuff goes. So vehicles you know some history on, whether it's the person you know the car, or how long they've had the car, or you get information from the Carfax that says this is their vehicle, they've had it for this long, and so forth, as far as that stuff goes, okay? Number 2 is vehicle with limited depreciation potential. And, well, how do you calculate that? Well, it's kind of, it takes a little bit of experience, but you can use some common sense things to be able to calculate, what the depreciation of the vehicle is going to be. Mileage is important when it comes to this. I love buying cars right at 100,000 miles to 129,000 miles. You can't go over 130,000 miles, or you're going to have issues getting it on the platform. But anything in that 100 to 129,099 miles range are great vehicles to purchase for Turo, because they've already depreciated substantially. There's a lot of people out there that think if it's over 100,000 miles, it must not be worth as much anymore, and so I would much rather buy a car, typically, obviously based on price, a car with 102,000 miles than a car with 80,000 miles, because typically that car is going to be substantially lower price, and it's going to limit the amount of depreciation I'm going to have. And what we want to calculate is the next 2 years. Most pre-owned cash cars that you're going to buy, you want to be able to rent the vehicle for 2 years to 3 years. I know other hosts will do a lot longer than that. To me, 2 to 3 years. I mean, these cars are going to be pushed a little harder than normal. They're going to be abused a little bit. And if you can get 2.5, 3 years out of the car, just be glad you got that and you're able to sell the car for depreciation. What is the target? I want to try to find a vehicle that's a little bit underpriced, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. And I want to be able to try to rent it for 2 years and sell it for within $2,000, $2,500 of what I purchased the vehicle for. That's why I want to stay away from some of the for my used cash cars. I'm not talking about new cars now. For my used cash cars, I want to stay away from some of these brands that typically doesn't have a lot of value when you get to the high mileage, like the Chryslers and the Jeeps and those kind of things. When those things get to 180,000 miles, like, they just don't have that much value. And other vehicles, there's a lot of other brands like that. But use common sense. The brands that tend to hold their value longer term, the Hondas, the Toyotas. Obviously, they're a little harder to find in this type of market. But any type of vehicle that is going to have a limited amount of depreciation in those 2 years, you want to target those. Number 3 is vehicles that are low maintenance. Okay, this is important. Evaluate, what is the maintenance going to cost on this car over the next couple of years, and what kind of a track record as far as reliability this car going to cost. Is this a brand, a type of car that can go from 110 to 180,000 miles with limited maintenance? You're going to have to do some maintenance, and this is where you evaluate. If it's got 4 brand new tires, that's great. If the person you're buying from the car just did the brakes 3 months ago, that's great. Those are all good things, because it eliminates some of the maintenance costs that you're going to have to put on the car in the next 2 years period of time. And next, number 4, vehicles slightly underpriced. And I emphasize slightly, because in this market, it's hard to find vehicles that are substantially underpriced unless there's problems with it. And it may be an accident that they're trying to hide. It may be some mechanical issues that they're trying to cover up, or a salvage title, or different things like that. So if you're looking for cars that are, every once in a while a car will fall into your lap that's $3,000 or $4,000 underpriced, but they're few and far between. And if you're searching for vehicles, you're better off targeting vehicles that are slightly underpriced. I'm talking between $1,000 to $2,000 underpriced, and you're more likely to find good quality cars that have low, 1 or 2 owners, that have limited accidents, that have good history, that have good records with them, and that's a fair price. And so they're asking, a lot of times, if it's too good to be true, it probably is, and it's probably a scam, or it's probably not a good quality vehicle. And then number 5 is you want a vehicle that commands a slight premium. And this is important to me. And let me kind of teach you something here. So I want to use an example of, I purchased, I have 2 other examples I'm going to do at the end of the video here. But one example is a 2008 Honda Odyssey van that I bought, okay? I bought the van about 2.5 years ago, about almost 3 years ago. and about 2.5 years ago. And I bought the van for $6,500. It had 107,000 miles on it. It's perfect what I'm looking for. It's the right brand that I know is going to limit the depreciation on the vehicle. The price was right. Remember, this is pre-COVID, so the prices would be really right now. But pre-COVID, it was a good price. Now, part of the reason why the price was low is because I had to do immediately the timing belt and water pump and all that stuff hadn't been done yet. So I immediately put about $1,000 of getting all that stuff finished and some new brakes and so forth. And so that brought in my cost to around $7,500, a little maybe $8,000 after paying taxes and registration, all that kind of stuff. Okay, but this is a vehicle that it commands a slight premium. And what I mean by that is, you know, if I was going to compare this vehicle to some of the go-tos of cash cars like a Toyota Yaris or a Mazda 2, which are both great, cheap vehicles, the value of those vehicles are they're very low to maintain, very cheap to maintain. There's not a lot of stuff that can break on them, but the difference in the pricing of what I can get for those vehicles. Those type of vehicles, I'm going to get, you know, $29 a day, $35 a day, maybe $40 a day top in peak season. And the Odyssey, it's an Odyssey with leather seats. You know, I was able to get $59, $69, sometimes $75 a day, almost double the price of what I could get of a cheaper car. Now, what could I have bought a Toyota Yaris or a Mazda 2 in that time frame? Probably around maybe $5,000, maybe $4,500, $4,000 in that range back then, before COVID. But it takes me double the amount of rentals, cost-wise, you know, than it would to get that money. Now, I'll do a little breakdown on that vehicle, but that vehicle brought in over $20,000 in that 2-year frame, a little over 2 years frame. And so, you know, because I'm able to get $59, $69, $75 a day rather than that lower spectrum. So if you can find vehicles that command a slight premium, why does it command a slight premium? Because people who are renting a Honda Odyssey van, they need the space. There's 6, 7, 8 people are not going to fit in a Toyota Yaris, so they got to pay up for that. If they're going to Enterprise, then those vehicles are, you know, that seat 6, 7, 8 amount of people or have that kind of space. I mean, you're talking they're going to be $100 and $150 for those type of vehicles. So vehicles that command a slight premium. Number 6 is vehicles that are easy to unload. Going back to the Honda Odyssey van, that type of vehicle is one of the easiest vehicles to unload. I purchased the vehicle 2.5 years ago for $6,500. I sold the vehicle today for $7,300. And now some of that is COVID differences. I get it. But the bottom line is I sold the vehicle very quickly within a week of listing the vehicle. It's very easy to unload that type of vehicle. The vehicle's now got 165,000 miles. And a Honda vehicle that you have, you know, good records for, maintenance records for, and that you can get to pass inspection, that even if it's got 160, 70, or even 80,000 miles, is easy to resell, and people will pay, you know, full Kelley Blue Book and then a little bit over. I mean, I ended up getting about $1,500 more than what KBB said the vehicle's worth because it's Honda and it's clean and it's a unique vehicle that a family that has a lot of kids, they got to have something like that. They can't afford a Suburban or a Tahoe, and so it's an easy vehicle. All right, let's look at the examples. We got the 2008 Honda Odyssey. You know, we bought it with 107,000 miles. We put about 60,000 miles on it. We bought it for $65,000. We sold it for $7,200, and we brought in approximately $20,000 in that period of time. Now that's not profit because there was plenty of maintenance that we did on that vehicle in that period of time. You know, maybe profit's going to end up being around $14,000, $15,000. Very, very good. I'll take that all day on a $6,500 vehicle. Next vehicle is a 2007 Acura TSX. I bought this for $9,000 with 109,000 miles on it. And this was a one-owner vehicle. It was the original owner. It only had one owner on the vehicle, 109,000, the perfect type of vehicle that I want. I sold it after 2.5 years for $7,500. It had about 170,000 miles when I sold it, and fairly easy vehicle to unload. It's a vehicle that, Acura, Honda, same thing, Toyota, Lexus, those type of vehicles. They're easy to unload, even if they have a good bit of miles on them, because people view them as reliable vehicles for a lot longer. So that's the type of vehicles we want to look at. Hopefully this is helpful. Stay tuned. We got more content to come. Thank you, guys.